Once upon a time, in the vast Australian outback, a 21-year-old farmer lived a simple yet fulfilling life. He had a beautiful wife who was expecting their first child. But as fate would have it, his country called him to duty. He left his farm and boarded a boat to Japan, ready to face the perils of World War II. The journey ahead was filled with battles in dense forests, teeming with mines and fierce Japanese soldiers, armed with samurai swords and bayonets, always ready to pounce. I fought alongside a platoon of 10 brave men, led by a captain I admired deeply. He was like a brother to me, brave and smart. I felt fortunate to battle by his side. One day we were ambushed by 30 Japanese soldiers. They were aggressive, shouting at us to put our weapons down. We complied, but then, in a sudden and brutal act, they shot the captain in the head. He was gone, just like that. He was like a brother to me, and now he's gone just like that. Rage filled me. I grabbed my gun and shot the person who killed him. My fellow soldiers, inspired by my actions, found the courage to fight back. We managed to kill some of the attackers, and 6 of us escaped and ran for our lives. We found a safe zone 20 kilometers ahead and reported back. For my bravery, I was awarded a medal. I was promoted, and soon after, we were sent on an important mission to the Philippines. I was to lead a group of 15 soldiers, along with 20 Filipino soldiers, to rescue USA and Australian officers held by Japanese forces. We traversed the jungle's watery terrain, dodging artillery fire and mines. The heat was unbearable, but we pressed on. Eventually, we reached the place where the officers were being held. One of the most intense operations we ever undertook. The dense jungle, the relentless enemy, and the constant threat of ambushes made every step a perilous one. We knew the stakes were high, but we were determined to complete our objective no matter the cost. The camaraderie and bravery displayed by my fellow soldiers during this mission were nothing short of extraordinary. And battle away, we lost 70% of our men in that bloody battle. I went in and saved most of my team and officers, getting them to safety. I went back to save the wounded, carrying them to a safe spot. Then suddenly, I fell into a trap, and then 5 soldiers, including what looked like an important Japanese officer, grabbed me and dragged me by my hair to the middle of a clearing. I was surrounded and yelled at. They knew I had saved all those soldiers and officers. 2 soldiers grabbed me and stuck both my arms out. The leader got his sword out and chopped both my arms off for being a hero, and this was a way of punishing me. They laughed and spat at me and left me there to die. As darkness fell, I was bleeding out. I didn't know how I was still alive. I guess thinking of my wife and my unborn child kept me going. A few soldiers came and started yelling, "Are you alive, soldier?" I used my last bit of energy and said softly, "Yes." They called in for help, and a medic arrived, transporting me back to headquarters. I woke up, and there was the Governor General, the Governor of Defense, and the Prime Minister in front of me, congratulating me and thanking me for my service and bravery. They awarded me the Victoria Cross, which is the highest medal one can get in war, and I was sent home to see my wife and meet my child that I hadn't met yet. But I had to face the fact that they would be meeting me with no arms, and I was wondering how they would think of me and react. I got back to my country in Australia and was greeted by the people I had saved. There was a huge crowd with loud cheers for my bravery and for saving their loved ones. I was honored, but deep down, I couldn't help but feel they noticing that they saw me with no arms. I tried to brush it off. Then suddenly I saw my wife, and by her looks I realized I had twins, a boy and a girl. I wanted to give them a huge hug, but I couldn't because of my missing arms. I saw my wife with a loving and big smile, but I could tell she was in shock that I had come back with no arms. My kids were wondering why Dad had no arms. I kissed my wife and explained what happened in the car until we got home. We had dinner and talked to my kids. Later, I made love to my wife, which was difficult and not the same without arms. Weeks went by and I kept having bad dreams about the war and PTSD. I started to get more frustrated and angry because of my condition. I was a war hero, a man of honor, but I didn't feel like a man or a hero to my family. I felt useless. I felt like I was on the battlefield, fighting not in a war but in my life. I felt my wife was not the same as she was before the war. We were distant and fighting. How can I expect her to love me with no arms and my anger and PTSD from the war? My kids felt awkward and weird about my arms. I tried to go for a job and live a normal life, but no one wanted to hire me because of my arms. They thanked me for my service and said I was their hero, but still couldn't hire me because of my disability from war. I felt like I couldn't provide for my family, and that made me feel less like a man. I had my war pension and payout, but it wasn't enough. I wanted my family to have the best life. Years went by and still no job. I started to get worse and things were not good in my marriage. I joined a war veterans group of suffering PTSD from war and their new life outside of war, but that didn't help me. I tried to enjoy life with my disability, but I couldn't. My dreams got worse, my anger got worse, and I fell into debt. My relationship with my kids and wife never got better. We stopped making love and she felt like she couldn't do anything to help me. I went to the local pub and drank a lot of whiskey to try forget my problems and my pain. I could tell the locals were laughing at me and teasing me because of my arms. I went crazy at them and got beaten up. How could this happen to a war hero? I got so much respect in the army, but in civilian life and with my family, I didn't feel respected or felt like a brave man in this new life. I felt like giving up on life. I just felt useless and miserable. I felt death was the best way to end my misery and suffering, and for my family to move on and be happy without me. So I wrote a big letter to my family and my kids, telling them I love them and I'm sorry. Then I got my gun and shot myself. I had fear of dying in the war, but it was the end of the war that killed me. This was a battlefield that I never could have won. So anyone that knows that has been in the war or is currently serving, show them respect and kindness and never give up on them. Show them love and support. And most of all, we thank you for your service and your bravery.